Welcome to No Longer Conformed. I am Erik Garthe, and we are in class with Job. Lessons about life's issues. In this session, we'll be looking at Job chapter 2 and verse 10, the second part of that. Choosing faith. When the storms of life finally subside, another battle begins to rage. The battle of the heart. Why would the God who created us allow so much suffering? The Bible records the story of a man named Job who experienced much suffering. Job responded to his suffering with great faith. His story raises an important question for you and for me. How will you respond when your world caves in? Will you choose faith? Let's look at three things that choosing faith won't do for someone who suffers, and then three things that it will do. First, choosing faith in suffering won't eliminate the pain. Job was crushed by the pain of suffering. Job chapter 1 verse 20 says that he tore his robe and shaved his head, and he fell to the ground when he heard that his children had died. And his physical illness of boils was so painful that he took for himself, it says, a potsherd with which to scrape himself. In the middle of all that heartache, Job made amazing statements of faith. Job chapter 1, verse 21. Naked I came from my mother's womb, and naked shall I return there. The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Verse 2:10 is also a testimony of faith. Shall we indeed accept good from God? And shall we not accept adversity? In all this, Job did not sin with his lips. Second, choosing faith in suffering won't stop the questions. In the book of Job, those first two chapters of great faith are followed by 35 chapters of questions. And Job wasn't alone with his questions. Jeremiah couldn't preach without weeping and questioning how God could have allowed so much despair. David dealt with questions for years while hiding from Saul, wondering if he would ever even live to become king. Psalm 13 in verse 1, he says, How long, O Lord, will you forget me forever? How long will you hide your face from me? Paul spent 2 years in a prison cell in Caesarea, right in the middle of his best church planting years. Even Jesus wrestled with suffering and questioned the Father if there was another way to achieve man's salvation from the penalty of sin. And then third, choosing faith in suffering won't reveal the answer. The book of Job provides an unusual picture. God gave an audience to Satan. The subject of their conversation was how a good man might be tortured. Nothing about this story seems to make sense. Suffering doesn't make sense. It's like gladiators in the Roman Colosseum, and God watches to see how much of a beating the man can take. The natural expectation in life is straightforward. We want every new baby to have a good family, a good childhood, a good education, a fulfilling and well-compensated job, a good home, and finally, a comfortable retirement. Job had all that. Look at Job chapter 1, the first 3 verses. There was a man in the land of Uz whose name was Job. And that man was blameless and upright, one who feared God and shunned evil. And 7 sons and 3 daughters were born to him. Also, his possessions were 7,000 sheep, 3,000 camels, 500 yoke of oxen, 500 female donkeys, and a very large household, so that this man was the greatest of all the people of the East. Our expectation of life runs into reality. Suffering comes into most lives with grief, hardship, misfortune, illness, crisis, tragedy, and more. And suffering pays no attention to age, to sex, nationality, or the size of a bank account. And Christian faith just doesn't make sense to unbelievers. 1 Corinthians chapter 1, verse 18, for the message of the cross is foolishness to those who are perishing, but to us who are being saved, it is the power of God. Job could have come up with a lot of reasons not to trust God in his suffering, but he chose faith anyway. His choice illustrates 3 things choosing faith will do for us. Will do for you. First, choosing faith in suffering will remind you that God is in control. God is always in control. Choosing faith doesn't allow God to be in control. It only reminds us that this truth has always been and always is. God wasn't tricked by Satan into letting him test Job. At no time was he out of control. Suffering doesn't make sense, and faith in suffering seems to make even less sense. And yet, placing your life in the hands of God, who can take care of you in this life and the next, is what you're called to do. Second, choosing faith in suffering will be your personal gift to God. Anyone can sing praise on the good days. It takes a person of faith to sing those same songs in the bad days. Job knew that God had controlled his good days, and he knew God was now controlling the bad days. Job 19, verse 25, for I know that my Redeemer lives. Job's circumstances didn't change who God is. He is the same today, just as he was yesterday, and as he will be tomorrow. The ultimate gift we can give to God is worship in our suffering. As Jesus carried the cross and the pain of crucifixion, he was committed to the will of the Father and glorified him. And then third, choosing faith in suffering will bring you closer to God. Job later had the most intimate encounter with God that he would ever have in his lifetime. Through suffering, he started a journey that led to a great understanding of who God was. Unfortunately, not every person comes closer to God on the road to suffering. Some choose to go in the opposite direction, away from God. How about you? You give that some thought, and you have a great day.